Good evening and welcome to 5 a Day with Jay. I am your host, J.R. Murdock. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you this evening? I'm so glad you're here with me. If you followed this series at all for some time, you know that I was in a band back in the day. Long time ago, back in the 90s, I was in a cheesy 3-chord punk band. I posted the video out there. By all means, go surf through my videos and you can go find it. Defective. We fought a lot. We played many places around San Diego. We played colleges. We played parties. We played often. We played poorly. And you know what? We had a good time. That was the whole point of it all. In the end, I wound up leaving because as much as I loved the lead singer, we just butted heads. I wanted to do more metal. He wanted to do more punk. And I wanted to write more songs. I wanted to sing more songs. I wanted to contribute more to the band. He wanted me relegated to go over there and play the bass. When I did play some of my songs, we would get mosh pits going and other things would happen. And he'd be like, yeah, let me get back in there. And he would want to sing. I don't know. It was just a lot of resistance. I guess creative types, we just butted heads. That was a long time ago. We were very young and tried and failed to become a successful band. These things happen. At any rate, the reason I bring that up is I just finished reading Dee Dee Ramone's autobiography. Dee Dee Ramone, the bass player for the Ramones, responsible for writing a majority of their hits, and even after he was booted out of the band, wrote a number of their songs, even though he wasn't credited with the writing of those songs. I also read Johnny Ramone's autobiography last year. One of the things when it comes to the Ramones, all of them were misfits. All of them had problems that led them to end up finding each other, usually through drugs and alcohol is how they wound up getting together. All of them had horrible home lives that led them to the lives that they had. One thing with reading a book like Dee Dee Ramone's book, don't expect a happy ending. Even Johnny Ramone's book, there are some ups, but you can, when you're reading it, you can sense the anger in him that he carried with him his entire life. Dee Dee Ramone, at least to a degree, let some of that anger go. And you can see the quote that I put on the title card today. He let some of that anger go, but he never let go of that resentment. I need to go back and research, but I believe that Dee Dee did play at least one more time with the Ramones. But the way the book ends was the Ramones on the way to their last tour in I believe it was Rio de Janeiro or down in South America, where Dee Dee just happened to be living. And he was going to go play with them. They had invited him to come play a song with them, but he was treated poorly. And he's like, you know what? Why am I putting myself through this? And he literally bailed out of the van on the way to the venue and just went home and said, no, I can't do this. I can't subject myself to this. He was one of the few that did clean himself up. Johnny Ramone later in his life also cleaned himself up. All of them had horrible addictions through a majority of their life. So when you read a book like Dee Dee Ramone's autobiography or even Johnny Ramone's autobiography, don't expect a lot of happy moments when you're reading those books, and I didn't. For me, it was more about getting the insight about how this band interrelated and didn't interrelate, how they almost factioned themselves off and pitted themselves against each other. Johnny Ramone was very militant. This is the way the band's going to be. We're going to be wearing t-shirts, we're going to wear leather jackets, we're going to wear knee-hole jeans, and we're going to wear tennis shoes. That is our uniform. We're going to have the same haircuts throughout the entire career. That's just the way it's going to be. And Dee Dee Ramone wanted to go experiment and be himself and do his own thing. So he and Johnny Ramone butted heads all the time, to the point where he was kicked out of the band. And they replaced him with CJ Ramone. away went Dee Dee. He was never invited back. He was kicked out. He was one of the founding members of the Ramones. He was one of the people, he and Johnny were the two that started the band. So it was fascinating to read both of their autobiographies and see how the stories interrelate, and for the most part they sync up exactly the way the two of them went at it. Johnny Ramone, in his book, he had a goal in mind, and his goal was, I want $1 million in the bank, so I never have to worry about money again. And he lived in crappy apartments and drove a crappy car, and he lived a crappy lifestyle. Yes, he did his drugs and his drinking, and he fought his way through life literally with everyone he ran into. Dee Dee Ramone had the same thing going on. Dee Dee Ramone never really gets into the money aspect and what he was working towards, but my assumption is that because his name was on the records, he didn't have to worry about money for a majority of his life. That said, both of them had a level of success that still didn't satisfy what either of them wanted out of life. They both still had something missing. With Dee Dee Ramone, in the book he talks about when his father passed away, and that's later in the book, and how he never really considered his father, and how he wanted to reunite with his mother and with his have his wife meet his mother, that type of thing. Johnny Ramone, similar thing. He literally wrote the epilogue of that book on his deathbed, talking about how he had months left to live and he was never going to see that book published. Both of those books have very, very different endings, almost tragically, that they're both so painfully depressing. But I couldn't put either one down, because when I was young, my first exposure to the Ramones was Rock and Roll High School in the early 80s. My dad knew of the Ramones. He wasn't a huge fan. He knew a couple of the songs. But listening to the songs, this was the first time as a young person I was introduced to negative music. Songs like Beat on the Brat, Shock Therapy, Psychotherapy, Gimme Shock Treatment. I mean, these songs were not happy. They were upbeat rock and roll, but the lyrics were just nothing I had ever experienced before in my life up to that point. Over the years, I followed the music of the Ramones, and I listened to more and more of their songs. When we were in our punk band, we played a couple of Ramones songs. We played some Misfit songs. We played the punk classics. But I never really understood what was behind those songs until reading these books and realizing just how tough of a life both of them had. From Johnny Ramone literally getting a fight with somebody and having his head crushed, his skull fractured, and waking up in the hospital. Dee Dee Ramone nearly overdosing on drugs, trying to go through rehab multiple times to get his life straight. Both of them had such a difficult time. It just goes to show you that money doesn't always make you happy. It can get rid of some of your problems, but it can compound you with other problems. Both of them had issues their whole lives. Read their books. The books are fascinating, but again, don't expect happy endings when it comes to anyone from the Ramones. The only Ramone I believe that's still alive is Marky Ramone, and I follow him on Instagram. He's still out there doing his thing. From reading the books, Johnny and Dee Dee, neither one of them got along with Marky because of everything that they were doing. The infighting of the band was just incredible that they were ever able to accomplish anything because of it. The dysfunction is almost what kept them together, and I find that absolutely fascinating. As a writer, when I read books like this, it stirs in me something that I want to include in my writing as well, is that not everything is hopeful and magnificent in the end. If you've read the Giant Robot Planetary Competition book, Orphan, the first book, the second book is coming out May 5th. I'm excited to drop it. Much like the two Ramones books, Johnny Ramone and Dee Dee Ramone, Orphan and Villain do not have happy endings. They aren't happy books. They aren't upbeat, hey, look at what's going to happen. V&A Shipping, a little bit more upbeat. There's some more humor in there, different banter between the characters, different style of writing with V&A Shipping books than the GRCP books. GRPC. That's kind of what I take away when I read books like this. I love reading autobiographies of musicians. I don't think I've read a biography because I would rather hear it from the individual's own words, which is interesting when you read Johnny Ramone and Dee Dee Ramone. These two were not well educated, and it comes across in their writing that they aren't well educated. Their storytelling isn't linear and cohesive. For the most part, yes, they told the story, in my opinion, better than Bruce Springsteen told his story in Born to Run, but in a much more simplistic, rough and tumble writing style. Both of them had very similar writing styles in the way they came across, which is rough, and that's the way that they were. They were rough. They were not fine-tuned. You read through the books and you just see where their heads are at. If you want to read an elegant autobiography, my recommendation is go read Duff McKagan. I just saw that one of my friends posted it on Facebook that he's reading Duff McKagan's autobiography. Incredible book. Duff McKagan is... I had assumed he was going to be similar to the Ramones, but no, far more intelligent, far more witty, and he tells a very elegant story, even though he was going through exactly what Dee Dee and Johnny went through in their lives. The drugs, the alcohol, the infighting of the band, the dysfunction of the band, being on tour and not wanting to be on tour, not remembering what city he's in, those type of things. It's interesting that any of these were able to function, let alone produce music. It's truly incredible. Duff McKagan's book, on the other hand, has a far happier ending. If you want a happy ending, go read Duff's book. If you want to learn more about the Ramones, read the two Ramones autobiography. Incredible books, but again, not happy books at all, and not happy endings, unfortunately. But that's all I got on this one. Just something different this evening, other than, hey, here's what I'm trying to get done. Just wanted to try and get something else out there. So, writing, still progressing. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow. Maybe I'll do something else tomorrow. Maybe I'll review another book. Maybe I'll review a movie. Maybe I'll talk about something completely different. I don't know. As a writer, when I read for enjoyment, but I also read to try and take on other elements that I can incorporate in my writing, and that's what I enjoy about reading. So, again, I've been Jay. You've been awesome. Until next time.